Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Ishwaro Guratmeti Murtibedha Vipakine Vyomavadyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtiya Namaha Sarva Vedanta Siddhanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanandam Sadgurum Pranatosmyaham. From the first Guru, pure existence consciousness, down to Shankaracharya in the middle, and my teacher at the end, I prostrate to Guru-disciple tradition. Ishvara, my Guru, is beyond form and duality, beyond space and time, and the body. I bow to Ishvara in the form of Dakshinamurti, which is the one who brings self-knowledge. The import of all Vedanta texts is beyond the known and the unknown. It is limitless bliss and unborn light. I worship that reality as my Guru. Chapter 7 of Panchadasi will be the subject matter today. And Swami Vidyaranya is an amazing character. He actually was involved he was a general in the army. So he was involved with people and had to strategize and protect. In other words, he has experience in both real life, and after he has done his mission, then he decided to retire, Vanamprastha, to the forest, and he decided that it was time to dwell in the truth. So anything that we receive is from a perspective of real life person who's been through the entanglements of life, but also who's gotten out of the entanglements. That is Swami Vidyaranya. So Vedanta is like science, if you think about it, is a collection of knowledge related to what? Related to the world, related to the material. And science is developed. It's got a body of knowledge, right? About various topics in the world. So how did science start? It started through, if you look at history, without using particular names, one character, for example, observed something, and by the observation, they postulated, they created the hypotheses, and then through the hypotheses, then they brought that out to other skilled scientists. And then the opinions were such that they couldn't break down the hypotheses. In other words, what started off as an observation ended up into a fact. And when I say fact, I mean that once the observation has taken hold and has been investigated, then despite trying to break that down, it could not be done, because enough perspectives have been put into place that no matter how you looked at it or approached it from whichever angle, you just couldn't break it down. So that's science. So this means that if someone now comes up and tries to challenge science, they can't do it. Why? Because science has enough developed knowledge, enough observation, not through one person, but multiple scientists throughout history. So the body of knowledge that we receive today is just a collection of different minds which have thought about different aspects of the world, the material world, of course, and then created this strong, firm, undestroyable knowledge called science. So in the same way, Vedanta is exactly the same. Vedanta, through years, through generations, through hundreds and thousands of years, by rishis who have observed phenomena in the world from their non-attached place, that is from the caves. Back those times, the Himalayas were, popular place for visits. It was like your common place of retirement. You just think of, where should I go? The mountains, right? Today it's a little bit different. Or the forest also. And because they were not attached to the world, they could observe the world without biases. So what they observed were certain phenomena of the Grihastha ashrama, that is the people working in the world, and they witnessed how easily we get entangled into the world. Innocently, we just get drawn into the worldly matters. And despite knowing of it, we're still drawn into worldly matters. So this means that even if you say, I'm entangled, I want to get out, you still choose to continue being entangled. So the distance between the observer, that is the rishis, were able to pick this up and then postulate the purpose of life. And the purpose of life was, all of this entanglement can go on forever, and it doesn't end. And it only ends when the person who's entangled sees that this entanglement, called samsara, is pointless. It's not actually leading to anything real. It's empty. It's essenceless in itself. It all just like pictures on the wall. It just comes, you're entertained, you give it a clap, you experience something with it, you transact with it, and then it goes away. And then we don't even talk about it. Why? Because the new picture comes up, and then we do the exact same thing, and then we make as though it is the next best thing. So, Vedanta is a result of this knowledge, which is why we can trust it, because it's not just coming from one person, right, that has made this postulation and then we're supposed to believe him, but it's a collection of different teachings. And this is the beauty of Vedanta, which means you don't have to rely on one person, on one guru. When you're in Vedanta, you're relying on what? A body of knowledge. This is where you can put your faith. That what we're interested in is not one person who claims they're enlightened, and then they say, if you don't have this experience, then you're not enlightened. Can you trust someone like that? No way. Because they have an individual experience. And if someone else is claiming the same thing, also has an individual experience. So the question is, who am I supposed to believe? So as a result of that, Vedanta is a very safe way to put our trust in, because we know it's not just one person, but it's many, like science, who have contributed to this wonderful school, to this wonderful methodology called pramana, means of knowledge. So as a result of Vidyaranya's observation, because he was also one of those who was able to create a distance between the world and himself, he created the text Panchadasi, which we're now going to dwell into. And he closely observed different personalities of people and different paths that people go through. And he came up with 7 different stages that everyone goes through, irrespective of background, creed, or any kind of belief system. So if you're a Christian, if you're in the Asian arts, in Taoism, in Buddhism, in whatever your book is, it's actually all inclusive. So everyone goes through these 7 stages. So the point of today is to help us see, number 1, where you are, what you should be moving on to, and what steps you should drop. That's an important one, because sometimes we're stuck in one level and we just sort of keep working on that one level, whereas we should be moving on. Otherwise, we never move on. Okay. So 7 stages of enlightenment, chapter 7. So this is verse 28 of chapter 7. I'm going to put a mind map. We're going to work on these mind maps today. and it's going to give us a quick preview of what we're going to talk about. Okay. Now the 7 stages are, the first 3 stages will cause bondage to the person. Bondage means they're entangled, and when you're binded to something, it's hard to get out. So the first 2 stages are, or the first 3 stages are actually tamas dominant. They're mainly at the mind, which is dull, which is slow, which is lethargic, which is generally slow to catch on. We all know these types. You know, you help them and you try to tell them about this knowledge, but they're just not catching on. They're not interested. So the first stage is ignorance. The second one is the stage of veiling. We'll talk about this in detail, of course. And then in the third stage, a little bit of rajas starts to come in. This is where karma yoga can help. And when the rajas comes in, then the person moves on to the stage of projection. Now, the next stages, 4 to 7, are when sattva starts to come in. So the 4th stage is indirect knowledge, 5th is direct knowledge, 6th is cessation of suffering, and 7th is perfect satisfaction. Okay. So verse 28, 7 stages can be distinguished with respect to the realization of the self, which we just went through. So with respect to the realization of the self. Do you see that? With respect to the realization of the self. So that means they are in reference to the one who is going through this. Now when I say to the one who is going through this, what do I mean? The body-mind that is going through this, trying to figure out what its purpose is and what it's here for. So the jiva, the reflected awareness, is affected by these 7 stages. Now when I say jiva, what are we talking about? The jiva? Jiva is what?
Intellect.
Body, mind, intellect, the BMI complex. So the body, mind, intellect complex is affected by the 7 stages. It does not say the self is affected by the 7 stages because the self was never affected to begin with. The self was always free. The first 3 cause bondage and the last 4 cause liberation. Now, one word that we need to address is this, reflected awareness. Okay? I'm going to stand up because I need a little bit of movement for this explanation. Okay. So I'm going to now explain what reflected awareness is. Okay? Now, look at that chart over there. This is the composition of the sthula, sukshma, and karana sharira of the individual, of the person. The subtle body is where our experience happens. So another way to put it is our experience, even in this class right now, is happening or is occurring in your mind. So an easy way to understand the subtle body is just to think of it as the mind. Now the mind is like a reflector. That's why we say jiva is, of course, these 3, the body, mind, intellect. But the jiva is a means for reflected awareness. Now when I say means for reflected awareness, think about a surface. For example, if I take something that shines like this. Never mind why this was here, it's charging, so it's always here. I suppose that I shine a light towards this composition, this model, okay? So what we have is a source that is shining onto a reflecting medium. So this entire model we can call reflecting medium. The reason I call it reflecting medium, or it's actually called reflecting medium, is because it's a medium that absorbs the light which is shining onto it. So you can only tell if this light is shining if it's hitting a surface. So the light in this case is the original awareness, the original consciousness, which is awareness, Brahman consciousness existence. And this light is shining onto what we call Ishvara 2. So if this is Ishvara 1, that is Brahman consciousness, then everything underneath the line would be Ishvara 2. Now, I used Ishvara 2 and 1 right at the beginning of this last year, but I'm going to bring it back in. So if I say Ishvara 2, all I'm really talking about is Ishvara. Now, you know what Ishvara is. Ishvara is the total. But total in respect to what? In respect to creation. Because in respect to, or in reference without creation, what do we call Ishvara?
Ishvara 1.
Ishvara 1 or Brahman. Okay, so only in reference to creation right now, we call Brahman Ishvara. So this means there's actually no difference between Ishvara 2 and Ishvara 1. It just depends from what angle you're looking at it from. But all the while Ishvara 2 is operating, there is a light shining upon it. Now the light is shining on what's called a pure reflection, a pure reflected medium. So Ishvara 2, you can start looking at as a pure reflecting medium. Why do I say pure? Because it is not contaminated by any attributes. It doesn't have any attributes to shine on. It's just like a mirror which is not reflecting any object. So if you imagine like a mirror right here, and then we're shining a light onto the mirror, and there's no object. It's kind of hard because you have to be witnessing the mirror to see the reflection. So technically the mirror will be, quote, contaminated by the object. But just imagine a mirror that's reflecting a strong light, and that's all it's reflecting back, just the light itself. So the light that it's reflecting is Ishvara 1 or Brahman, and the reflecting medium, that is the mirror, is Ishvara 2. So if we have a picture here, I think we have a nice picture. Okay, we'll use this picture. So here we have original consciousness, and the mirror is pure. Okay, and I don't think the mirror is sad, because the mirror is only reflecting the sadness. And the sadness belongs to what? The reflecting medium on a microcosmic level, which is our subtle body. So this little mirror is pure. We call it Ishvara 2. And this mirror is reflecting the entire creation. Not just here on this earth, but the entire universes, all parallel universes, this mirror is reflecting. And it's being shone on or illumined by Ishvara 1, in other words, consciousness. Now, just imagine there's a small segment here. Okay, it's kind of like, you know, a limiting example, because now I'm going to put a time-space limitation to Ishvara. But just for purposes of demonstration, imagine there's a small dot here. And in that small dot, you see this face. Okay, because that small dot, you're in that small dot, right? And in that small dot, we have this, the jiva's gross body, subtle body, and the causal body. And the awareness, Ishvara 1, is not only shining on one dot, but it's shining on every single dot. Now remember, every dot, which has different kinds of faces, some dots have happy faces, some dots have very sad faces, but they're all shone on by what? Ishvara 1, which is you, who you are. So right now, if you think about it, what's happening is you, when I say you, I'm talking about Ishvara 1, are shining upon the entire creation, and the entire creation we call Ishvara 2 or just Ishvara. Okay, but we'll stick with Ishvara 2. And every single dot is an individual, like one there, one there, one there, one there, one there, one there. And they all have reflecting mediums called subtle bodies. One of them is Michael's One of them, like everyone has a reflecting medium, and it's one consciousness that is shining on all of them. Okay, and that consciousness you are. Now, look at it from this way. So, the reflecting medium, the objects, now when I say object, I'm talking about what? I'm talking about anything known to you. That means even your own emotions are an object. So happy, sad, or exhilarated, or feeling on top of the world, or just feeling normal, right? It doesn't really matter how you feel. When we say object, all we're really saying is something that is known to you. Now, you don't even have to know who this you is. It's just known to you. Of course, when I say you, I'm talking about Ishvara One. So there's an object of a particular emotion, and this object is where? Located onto the subtle body. It is pervaded in and through by your subtle body, by your mind. And because your mind is supported, or stick with the curriculum, your mind is supported by reflected awareness, and reflected awareness is actually pure reflection. And what do we say about pure reflection? Remember the mirror? Ishvara 2. So there is an individual reflected awareness. That's why we have here reflected awareness, you see? So remember, the whole mirror of the total is a reflection. But the reflection, you can just imagine like breaking the mirror into 7 billion different pieces. So every piece is reflecting, because every mirror broken is a different piece, right? So it's going to have a different experience with its own karmas, with its own individuality. So the reflected awareness is what we call Atman. Okay? So what is Atman? The original consciousness, Ishvara 1, shining onto Ishvara 2. And Ishvara 2 is, remember, Maya Shakti in reference to creation. So the other names that we can use for reflected awareness to help us is just reflection, and we'll use this picture here. Just imagine that, okay, we'll put a little, a consciousness symbol here, like Brahman symbol. So Brahman is always Brahman, like that. And again, it's the same idea as here. So Brahman is looking at itself, but because Maya puts different individual parts, different individual forms, nama rupa, throughout creation, then whatever this light is shining, it will illumine that limitation, right? So for example, one limitation is like that. So that means if you're like this, then you're not like this. If you're like this, then you're not like that. So this is what we mean by limitation of samsara. Okay. The other names that we can use for Atman is eternal jiva. These are all new names that I'm putting out. Or non-experiencing witness. Now, when I say non-experiencing witness, what's the difference between that and experiencing witness?
Experiencing witness is the individual body, mind, intellect?
Yeah, excellent. And the non-experiencing witness is the consciousness shining onto the body, mind, intellect. Okay. So, reflected awareness, we're talking about Atman. So what is Atman? It is original consciousness, which is Ishvara 1, which is bouncing off or reflecting in where? The reflecting medium. So right now, your experience about yourself, of who you are, the person sitting down, is nothing but you, original consciousness, self, shining onto every individual body. So by this alone, you can just start to think and say, okay, well, I do have an experience of myself as a person, but that experience of a person is only just one little broken piece of glass, right? And despite it being a true experience, I can, by knowledge alone, I can accept that is one consciousness which is illumining not only this broken piece of glass, but all of the broken pieces of glass in the entire universe, in all creation, okay, in parallel universes also. Okay, so when this, I will just read this out. When this entire creation projection happens, so just stop there, don't go further. So when this entire creation projection happens, it gets projected out of what? Out of Ishvara 1. Okay? Because it has to have a cause. For projection to happen, you have to have a projector. So obviously there's a cause. So when this entire creation projection happens, meaning what? When Maya Shakti chooses or causelessly causes itself to what? Project the entire universe. Now, why did I say Maya Shakti causes itself and not Brahman? Because to say that Brahman caused Maya to project the world means what? We're now putting an attribute, a deciding factor, an intellect onto Brahman. Okay? So Brahman does not have any, quote, control when Maya projects this creation or not, because it is just a power in itself and it happens of its own accord. Just like you dream at its own accord, you don't control when the dream happens. Okay, so when this entire creation projection happens, and we're living in it now, then self seemingly forgets that it's the self. So what forgets that it's the self? Ishvara 1. So it doesn't actually forget. It only forgets it from the reference point of what? Creation. Because if Ishvara 1 forgot itself, then there would be no hope for us. It would be completely covered by Maya. So Maya cannot touch you. You means what? Brahman. But it can touch what? The Jiva. Apparently touch the Jiva. Why did I say apparently? Because the Jiva is also known by the original light that is shining onto it. So the Jiva itself is also Ishvara 1. Okay. So then the self seemingly forgets that it's the self. One more point. Now, suppose that this is the entire creation, the model, and then there's a light shining onto it. And then we just take like one little universe there, right? And there's infinite universes. So just to shine on one single universe in itself will instantly cause the universe and all of the knowledge in the universe and all of the jivas in the universe to be isolated to its small section, because they don't have the other information of other universes. You see? That's the problem with, well, it's not a problem, but that's the infinite universes division. So that's why it forgets, because it doesn't have the whole. So it's one light reflecting on a reflecting medium, and the reflecting medium has a subtle body which is able to say something about itself. About itself means what? About its self through the aspect of what? Creation. And then it starts to think. So the person starts to think, the body-mind starts to think with the help of Maya. Of course, you cannot think unless you're given a body-mind intellect to think. That it's the reflection. You understand? And what do we say about the reflection? The reflection is one little piece of glass. So this is our problem in the world. We think, oh, I'm this person. You're just talking about one single reflection in the entire creation. And then we get entangled as though we matter. As though the contents of our little mirror, of our little body-mind matters. And then we tell our friends, and then we speak, and then we contaminate, of course, other people's innocent minds about our little small, isolated part. Okay. So then the person starts to think with the help of Maya that it's the reflection. And since the reflection is... So what's the reflection? This. That's the reflection. Not this. The reflection is this. The light. Okay, so if I turn on the light, You can only see the contents of all of this if I go like that. So, but not only is this pure, but because there is reflecting mediums onto it with different personalities, then this light takes on the attributes of this reflecting medium called your subtle body. Okay? So it starts to think with the help of Maya that it's the reflection. And since the reflection is entwined with the reflecting medium, that is the subtle body, which produces all experiences, we said that on the beginning, your mind, then the self thinks it's experiencing all these things. Now, how does the self think? Obviously, awareness cannot think. It thinks with the help of Maya. So everything that the self does, it's only using its own power, Maya Shakti, that's the irony. We think we don't know who we are, but we're only able to think about that we don't know who we are because of our own power. Yeah? Or even to discover knowledge. Because of what? Our own power, which not only suppresses or clouds our knowledge of ourselves, but that same power which clouds you is the same power which liberates you. That's why we don't, put down Maya or the world, because the world is the same power, is Maya itself, right? So to go around saying it's all an illusion and to put things down, there's just no sense in it, because it's the very world of individuality that makes you realize who you are. Okay. Okay. So when creation occurs, that means when the projection, creates this world, when Maya creates this world, the self forgets itself. That means on the microcosmic, on the individual level, the Vyashti, apparently with the help of Maya. Why? Because it's a singularity, a single piece of glass, and mistakes itself for the reflection. And as we said, the reflection again is always pure, but on the reflection is what? Bodies, minds. And bodies, minds, are they pure? No. You cannot say, can you say your body, mind is pure? It's only pure in reference to something else, but it's not absolutely pure. You understand?
What do you mean by pure? Exactly?
Pure, that means it's flawless, it's perfect. Now, I know you can say both. I know what you're going to say. Yeah, it is pure, it is perfect. But when I say pure, is it limitless? Right? It is limited to just the body itself. And also, what do I say is the body pure? The moment we are born, we start to what? Digest ignorance, digest the world's conditions. So the moment you go, wah, instantly from that moment, the pure, you're the most pure as a baby. As soon as you're born, impurity starts. And what I mean by impurity? Notions about reality which are not true. So then we grow up and then we carry around these notions. So what I mean by impure is notions which are out of alignment with reality. Okay. So let's return back to the text. So again, I'm going to read. The jiva, reflected awareness, remember, is Atman, is apparently affected by these 7 stages. The first 3 cause bondage and the last 4 cause liberation. Okay, now let's look at each one of them individually. Ignorance is the stage characterized by I do not know who I am. This is unconscious incompetence. I don't know what I don't know. And is the cause of the indifference to truth sustained by lack of inquiry. So what this means is, if you try to teach someone or tell someone about your amazing journey of Vedanta, and they're just a normal colleague at work, and you tell them, the truth is out there. It's like X-Files. And, it's laid out for you. And, you need to be with God. You need to start less depending on the world and start depending more on God. And what are they going to say? It's sure, I'm going to find, I go to the church. I do my sadhana once in a while. But they're just not catching it on. They're not interested. They just sort of dismiss it as just like another conversation that you have at a dinner party. So, and why does this happen? Because it is dominantly tamas. That means the mind is it's very gross. So whoever says something like that they're sort of not interested, or I'll get into that, all that really means is the mind, which is the reflecting medium, is predominantly focused towards gross objects. It is still identified with the worldly, solid things. If I see it, it's good enough for me, right? So the mind's trained to look at very solid, gross experiences, very surface kind of things. And okay, it's also indifference to inquiry. So in other words, there's no point in inquiring. Why? Life is okay, got enough money, got a wife, husband, everything's okay in life. So there's no need to inquire beyond the obvious, beyond the gross objects. Okay. So indifference is basically, I do not want to know who I am because I'm too interested in the world. I'm too fascinated by the glory of worldly Las Vegas and theme parks and so on. This is common in society, hence you're wasting your time helping them because they're just not going to catch on. So this is why Vedanta qualifies people before they come in, because you're just going to waste your time in stage one. Trying to help someone whose mind is tamasic, wasting your time, for the most part, right? They just let them play, let them continue with the worldly matters, and suddenly what happens is, something serious happens. Often it's an accident, or they sort of go through some trouble, and then they start to think about what is there more than just this world. It's a very common pattern. Okay. Stage one. Ignorance. Ajnanam. That means no knowledge at all. So this is the stage we all go through. At this stage, a person thinks he is his thoughts and takes the world to be real. He doesn't know that he doesn't know that there is a self, much less that he is it or that she is it. Thoughts like the self does not exist or the self cannot be known typify this kind of tamasic veiling, cloud that covers the self, apparently covers. They persist when inquiry is not conducted along scriptural lines. So they persist with what? Their usual ways of worldly entanglements. The usual, from our standpoint, we can say ignorance, but from their standpoint, it's not ignorance, it's just life. And that's what they persist with, that kind of life, which is devoid of scriptural interests or any kind of interests pertaining to God, Ishvara. Okay. So ignorance, ajnanam, some attributes. I don't know. In fact, this thing, I don't know who I am, that doesn't even arise because there's nobody to ask any question. It's just world stuff. And they're not interested in knowing if they're told. about this higher knowledge. Just not interested. Because I'm fascinated by my wife, my children, by the business. You know, I've got responsibilities. So there's a justification process that comes in. And it causes indifference to the truth or general being turned off, like a holy person. You know, oh, they're too holy for me. They're too pure. They're not for me, right? I need someone exciting. You don't find a sexy priest, do you? Okay, unconscious incompetence, that's another way of looking at this. I don't know that I don't know, okay. So here often we also have, like, it's all a mystery. You try to engage this topic with them and they say, it's all a mystery, man. This is like, whoa, just change the topic. It's all one big mystery here, right? It's so far away that it's just like, just put it away. It's not even like, it's just like thousands of kilometers away. You know, just leave it alone. It's just a mystery. It's too vast. So I want you to go, by the way, as we're going through this, relate this to yourself, to your own journey, how you went through this journey, because we all did. And we also have these characteristics. We may still have them here and there, but they slowly come out as we get into that. Okay, they believe I am the body, mind, intellect. That's why they believe their thoughts. What is your body? It's a very long thought. What is your mind? It's a very long thought. In fact, the thought of I am, the body, mind, intellect, is the longest thought in life, except during deep sleep. Even in a dream, it's still I am the body, mind, intellect, but not the physical, I am the subtle body, mind, intellect. So this thought, the awareness, original consciousness, Ishvara 1 identifies with, is called this I am sense. I think it says here, I am. So the I am sense is when original consciousness, Ishvara 1, is reflecting on an uneducated intellect. And this uneducated intellect is then owned by the ahamkara, the ego, and the consciousness you are also shining on the ahamkara. And the ahamkara is reading the contents of the intellect, which is saying what? I am this body, mind, intellect. And therefore, you say, I am the body, mind, intellect. But actually, who's saying it when I say you? The jiva is the unintelligent, uneducated intellect, not Brahman. Brahman stands completely apart, untouched by any of this. Okay, this is also the world of atheists. You know, we all go through, not all of us, it's kind of dangerous to say all, but some go through this stage of kind of giving up, right? And the science is too convincing, so I just discard as this whole religion as, I don't see it because my senses don't perceive it, and if my senses don't perceive it or scientific instruments don't pick it up, then it just doesn't exist. So thus I, become an atheist. So that's stage 1. And why do their ignorance persists? Because where do you find knowledge? In the book of knowledge. But if I discard the book of knowledge as just, new age mumbo jumbo, then am I going to ever arrive to the truth? No. So that's the thing about stage 1, is that the very ignorance or the tamasic mind is the very obstacle to transforming this mind into something that's a little bit more happier, into a little more sattvic mind, right? Okay. You're not the one to be conducting inquiry unless you've been taught how to inquire. Self-inquiry is application of knowledge, self-knowledge, atmadhyanam, to your intellect at any moment in the light of the scriptures, not in light of channeled materials, angelic beings, or different things picked up here and there. Because if we pick that up and we put that stuff where in the intellect, then since the awareness is always shining on the intellect, what is it going to pick up? Confusion. because everything's saying, something different. So then a person walks around confused. So what do we need to do? We need to drop the scriptures where? Into the intellect. Why the scriptures? Because what I said right at the beginning of the class, what is Vedanta? Like science, thousands of rishis have what? Observed the world and postulated unbreakable observations which cannot be negated and added them into the scriptures. So to live the scriptures is to live what? Is to live what's already being done for you. That is, the world has already been observed, it's already been analyzed, the information has already been directly gotten through deep states of meditation. So what are we borrowing? We're borrowing thousands of years of experience. So now you can see the fruitlessness of trying to go to one guru who says one thing and then another guru who says another thing. Just go to where all the knowledge is, a collection of experts. And we're putting that knowledge in our intellect, and since awareness is shining on the intellect, what happens? Our reality gets aligned exactly to what is, instead of having these false notions. Okay, so you're not the one to be conducting inquiry unless you've been taught to inquire. This is why I say don't bother reading at the beginning books by yourself, because if the intellect is still reading it through its own false notions, then it's going to convert the scriptures into what? False notion.
So you're saying that we can't do our own self-inquiry, that we need someone to show us how it's done, or to be...
Can a child learn how to walk by itself?
No, but after reading enough books you get into the gist of how to do inquiry. And I think through time that one can do...
Yeah, I mean, we're never going to say you can't.
Yeah.
You can.
Yeah.
But the chances of this canness in the world of busyness is just so small. It's just, you don't even mention it. Might as well just say you can't. Anyone else want to summarize number 1? Ignorance? Any comments, observations, insights? Adrian?
So,
what is ignorance? So now, when we say ignorance in class, now you should know what ignorance means. Because we just discussed what is ignorance.
ignorance is when the jiva thinks that the world is real and they do not know who they are, and they usually don't even think, I don't know who I am. They just think, I am a person, I am in the world and the world is real.
Excellent.
Couldn't an ignorant person get at least something out of, I don't know, going to a temple or some sort of Dvaitic worship? Or, I just think maybe they can get even if they read some spiritual book that's New Age or something, maybe they can get just a little bit to lead them on to the higher step.
Definitely. It all helps a little bit. But they're not going to stick around in the temple as much as someone else in stage 2 and onwards will. Right? So they're maybe going to go for the sake of satisfying someone else, or but it's just that it doesn't. It's kind of like you have to be invited to go to a temple, but you're not going to go by yourself. Or you have to be invited to read a book on spirituality, but you're not going to buy a book on spirituality yourself. You buy more like how to do stock trading, or real estate, or how to seduce women, something like that.
So if a person did of their own kind of volition buy a spiritual book, they wouldn't be at stage 1, they might be stage 2. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, you can't really say yes or no, but generally, yeah, that will be a good close indicator. Yeah. Because if you think about it as a child, right, who's just kind of like, in that stage of puberty and attraction, like boys, girls, they're all eyeing each other, right? They're not now suddenly after class going into, the church praying to God. And even if they are, it's probably going to be to get what I want, right? To get the girl, get the guy. So it's still in that stage of what can I get out of this? And any spiritual pursuit is only on the basis of my own likes and dislikes.
Can I just I thought it was interesting how you put atheists in that first category. 'Cause,
Okay, you have to tell me what is atheist in your language.
well, yeah, I think a lot of people that call themselves atheists would have a lot more inquiry. Like maybe they're in the other section, but they just deny. I think they just have a problem with the word God and how they define it.
Very
Because a
true.
lot of them do have a lot of self-inquiry, I think, but they just don't.
That's an
really-
excellent point. That's an excellent point. And actually, I don't explain atheist a lot. Also, in my opinion, as far as I've seen, an atheist is always someone who's actually they're quite intelligent, right? They're quite inquiring in the aspect of the physical world. And this whole, as a result of this bombardment of God, this, God, that, they just sort of like shut it away because it's not appealing. But usually what happens is after some time they, something happens as a result of their inquiry and then they come back into it. Because why? God gets mentioned in a different appealing way this time.
Or maybe
So-
the word God doesn't actually get mentioned,
Yeah.
and it opens up their mind or senses to something
Oh
else.
yeah, God opens up a lot of,
Or closes a lot of people down.
closes a lot of
Yeah.
people. Yeah. So maybe that's why they sort of say, I'm an atheist. So maybe they don't even say, I don't believe in God. Maybe to them God is something else, like, this mysterious beauty of the world. Right? But also you have this other kind of atheist, like very strong, no God, it's just physical. Once we die, that's it. That's all there is to it. Okay. Stage 2. So after some time, they've gone through some inquiry, things that happen in life. Now they arrive to stage 2. Denial, veiling, concealment, avaranam. Avaranam is covering. In other words, now they know they're covered. Before, they didn't even know that. Now they know. That's why it's expressed ignorance. I am ignorant. Before, it's like a teenager, 15-year-old teenager. I know everything. Okay, he or she takes himself to be the reflected self. You don't have to write this down because I'll give you the notes. So he takes himself to be the reflected self. Remember the reflected self? Original consciousness shining onto the subtle body. So the contents of this body equals I. If this body is messed up, then I'm messed up. If this body is pure, I'm pure. But it's still not the original I. So they take themselves to be the reflected self and thinks the self is an object. That means it's something that I can grasp. It's something that I can own. It's something that
I can fix.
Huh?
Something that I can fix.
It's something that I can modify, yeah. It's something that I can add onto my mind, right? For whose purpose? For my purpose. So this means the ego is still trying to add things onto itself to amplify its self-existing status. Because that's how the ego works. It means I am alone here, the existence. And as long as you add on to my existence, then my existence becomes bigger. That's why because they're covered, they don't know still, because it's still a clouded mind, but they're sort of a little bit open now. They have their expressed ignorance. So honesty starts to come in. He takes himself to be obviously an independent existence. Okay, and says that because he or she can't experience Ishvara, God, it doesn't exist. So that's like saying I can't experience. Okay, suppose you eat and you're full. And you say, I can't experience being hungry. Is that true? It is true from the aspect of being full. So it is true from the aspect of stage 2. I can't experience it. But in the later stages, this also gets removed. Just like when, eventually sometime the stomach is hungry, then you say, I can experience hunger. Right? So just because they can't experience it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's about to arrive at some other stage. Or he accepts the idea that it exists and tries to experience it by doing certain practices. Sounds familiar? That's 99% of spirituality. I think I'm going to note here. Okay, this is not my note, this is just, James always uses other names. I'm not that kind of person. Most of today's, sincere people who are doing the best they can are in this category. For example, do this technique and then you will get certain results. Breathe in a certain way and you will attain nirvana. Go to take your clothes off, in a tantra class, which I've seen also that world. In Byron, my friend was in that, posting pictures of himself naked with a whole group of people. Great. So I just, took that off. And you experience the self. In other words, it's like I know Tantra is not just about orgasm, it's a lot deeper. But let's face it, go into Google, all you have to do is just type in Tantra and you'll see what comes up. Google images. So what does this say? It reveals the structure, how well the structure of the methodology has kept its fullness. So if I type in Tantra, only 2 or 5% of Tantra is actually sexual union. And I type in Tantra and I see nothing but naked people. What does that say about the methodology? It went wrong somewhere, because that's not supposed to happen. If the methodology is strong, then it's supposed to preserve its authenticity. And if it's not, if it's got loopholes, then what happens? Then people's likes and dislikes extract preferable parts, and then they make that entire methodology about that one single preference. And 10 out of 10 times the preference will be of what? Sensual gratification, because lower carnal drives always win out over the higher divine visions of God. That's just human nature. You don't tell a person about their nature, naturally they're going to subscribe to the lower carnal drives. Reproduction, survival, fight or flight, happens naturally. So, and you type in Vedanta, actually I'm not going to use that example, but you go into different, type in, for example, Buddhism. You can have a whole variety of practices, right? A little bit of meditation, a little bit of compassion, a little bit of kindness, a little bit of generosity. So you can see how beautifully it preserves its authenticity. So this stage is conscious incompetence. That means I'm now conscious that I am incompetent. I know that I don't know. Or he or she accepts the idea that it doesn't exist, and because it doesn't exist right now, I have to do something, therefore I go to a guru in order to get a technique that by its performance I will experience it. Okay, so I will do it, or he accepts the idea that it doesn't exist and tries to experience it by doing certain practices. So today's spiritual world is basically about practices. Like spiritual festivals and so on. Of course, now I know what you're going to say. Is there anything wrong with it? I did not say anything's right or wrong. It has its place, but just so you can see where all the stages are, how they're observable in society. If he experiences what he thinks is the self, that is the truth, he will think he has got it. I got it. But what is, to say I got it, what does this mean? To say I got it. I got it. What does this imply? That I got something. That means I now know something as an object. I've now gained knowledge of an object. That's why it says here, self is an object. And I've gotten that object. And because I've gotten that object as a result of Guru's teaching, I say, I've got it, and I am now finished. I'm resolved. I'm enlightened. When getting it is knowing the real getting it is knowing that you Ishvara one are not the doer or the enjoyer. Who's the doer or enjoyer? The three bodies, the gross, causal, and the subtle body. So who actually got it? So let's put this aside. When you say I finally, and you really, and it's true, okay, you got it permanently. Who actually got it? Okay, suppose you've gone through Vedanta teaching and authentically you say I got it, right? And we don't have to philosophize now, no, who's the one who got it. Like, you really got it. Who got it? Because you did get it, right? We agree with that. But I want to know who got it. Who got that my nature is the same nature of the entire cosmos? Intellect. That's it. So to say, even if you mean it, that means all jnanis who go through this journey and they say, they don't even say I got it. It's just that like, aha, right? What goes aha? The intellect having removed its notions which were saying otherwise something else, which wasn't in accordance with reality. So yes, you did get it, but you didn't get it. Like, I'm going to explain that. You, the intellect, did get it. The jiva, you got it, but you never got anything in the first place.
It's always been there.
Yeah, you've always been there. That means you've always been there chilling out, resting in peace, in extreme stage of struggling to get this, and then you're still chilling out, resting in peace, in a stage after the intellect goes, wow, I missed the most obvious thing. That's why we say there is no such thing as moksha. Because who gets moksha?
The intellect.
The intellect. It's always going to be the intellect. You might as well just keep saying intellect to everything. Okay, so moksha means what? The intellect has now gained enough education whose knowledge is aligned with the reality thanks to our rishis, of course. And when it's finally accepted that knowledge and it's got no way out of that knowledge, it then goes, wow, so I am it. I, the presence that was always there, that was witnessing myself meaning intellect, struggling, and that self is still there witnessing the intellect now enjoying its knowledge being aligned with the absolute reality. I never got touched in the first place. This is why there's no such thing as moksha. From the reference point of Brahman, there is no such thing as moksha. From the reference point of a jiva, there is moksha. So moksha means what? The intellect simply got aligned. It gave up to its false notions because it was persuaded enough by its correct notions. Like I say, Vedanta is nothing but a persuasion model to convince you that you are already done. You're already accomplished. Or, okay. Let's see what this says. Okay, how can you get it when this is still the doer and the enjoyer? So the doer enjoyer got it. Okay, mistake is, I, the jiva, that means the intellect, want to keep the doer and add this status called moksha. I've added moksha to my spiritual resume. I've got a hug, I've got 2 gurus, I was appraised, and I've also got a moksha. It's like a long, list of accomplishments. Now I have a special status because I've gotten something that you don't have. Thus I, Mr. or Mrs. Enlightened, can teach you the Mr. or Mrs. Ignorance. Because I have gotten this moksha. This is the condition of the most spiritual, or a number of spiritual teachers. Enlightenment is not a special status. Truth is, you are it. You want summary of the entire Vedanta? Those 2 words, 3 words. You are it. Never being anything other than the truth, whether ignorant or knowledgeable about it. That's the funny part, is that you go like, my God, what have I been chasing? I've been only attending to this, 3 bodies. I haven't been touching myself through this entire period of suffering or enjoyment. Okay, so what does the mind map say? It's just some pictures, nice for the brain. Okay, denial. Who's this? Simpson? I just go to Google Images and I just put different symbolic images onto the mind map. Okay. Cloud, so that's the tamas, and it's covering you, Brahman. And this is what? Your mind, or a person's mind. And because it's covering awareness, it says, self, God cannot be known. Okay, here's an example. What gives birth to a cloud? The sun. How? Because the sun warms the water, evaporation, it forms the cloud. So the sun gave birth to the cloud, and that very thing which the sun gave birth to ends up what? Covering its source, covering the one which made the cloud possible. So that's how Maya works, basically. Ishvara 1 gives, out of Ishvara 1 arises Ishvara 2 through its Maya Shakti, and then because it is individuated into different Mura shattering parts, it then, as though clouds, covers the sun. Okay. This is, I don't know that I don't know, basically. Qualities. Self is the reflected awareness. Yep. Which is what? Shining onto the reflecting medium, which is what? The body, mind, intellect. And it thinks it's an object. It can't be experienced, and it tries to experience it. And if it fails, then I think it's coming out to stage 3. What happens when it fails? Level of modern spirituality. Okay. I gained enlightenment status. This is stage 2. And I can walk away because I'm enlightened, and you're not. Therefore, I'm better than you, and vice versa. And so they don't understand, and they need to be taught. Because now, when you express your ignorance, you haven't even begun to learn, have you? Right? When I say I don't know, it doesn't mean that I've gotten into the stage of learning. It just means I don't know. That's why it says, from then on, I need to be taught. And they often try to read their way to liberation. Do you know people like this who try to read their books into enlightenment? I know I was for the longest time possible. Gotten nowhere.
Really?
Zero. No, I say that because no, I mean in the relative world you do get far, but Mithya and Satya are 2 different orders of reality. So moksha is totally other than all of the knowledge you can gain in this world. It's totally different order of reality. So they also go to satsangs and they listen to a lot of audios. Why? Because if I do go to satsangs and listen to audios, I'm going to get some object called the self, and we're going to put it onto my spiritual resume. And they, because of this, the person who is doing the best they can interprets the teaching according to their own ignorance. That's why they're reading. Why do you read? Why do we read knowledge? Because we don't know the knowledge that we're reading. So what does this mean? The reader is the ignorant one. And the ignorant one means what? I'm reading knowledge according to my pre-established ignorance. Thus, all of the knowledge that I read is going who's going through whose eyes? Through the eyes of pre-established false notions. Solution is, of course, Karma Yoga for this. Okay, stage 3. Oh, have we read this? He does not understand it needs to be taught and tries to read his way into liberation. Interpreting I did not put this. This is just comments I got from James. Interpreting the teachings according to his or her own lights. Interpreting the teaching is like putting the fox in charge of a chicken coop. If you put a fox in charge of a chicken coop, what's going to happen?
No more chickens.
No more chickens. So to give my mind and try to figure it out is equivalent, because it's going to make a mess out of this knowledge. So inquiry or discrimination of the self from its reflection. So discrimination of Atma and Anatma, okay, the self from its reflection is a rigorous impersonal practice dictated by the scriptures. That's why this journey is very much personal. It was never about your partner or let's go on this journey together. It's not about that. There is a part of that, but ultimately it comes to be very, very personal. That's why I just don't speak about spirituality if I'm in the real world. Just act like a normal person, talking about normal things, nothing special. Okay, stage 3. Any questions about stage 2? Stage 2 is denial. Stage 2 is just basically I don't know that I don't know. No, stage 2 is I know that I don't know. I'm expressing my ignorance. Which means what? I'm now opening up a door to learning. So when does the door to learning happen? Stage 2. Stage 1, you're still having a lot of fun in the world. It's a very fun period. You have to worry about annoying other people, driving cars with loud exhausts, and putting loud music, annoying the neighbors. You don't have to worry about that because, it's just all self-satisfaction, stage 1. Okay, stage 3. Projection or erroneous notions are called vikshepa. So what is projection? Projection is synonymous with Raja Guna. Raja Guna is an active energy, an energy that creates other than. Other than means it creates its own, it just creates a projection, whether it is of education or not of education, whether it's educated projection or uneducated. So Raja Guna is responsible for this entire world of projection. And there are erroneous notions, and they're called vikshepa. So erroneous notions means what? Notions which are not in alignment with reality. He or she hears that there is a self, but has no idea what it is, and develops all sorts of fantasies about it. Okay? So now in stage 2, because I have expressed ignorance, now I say, what's the next question you say? What is the self? I want to know. And then what happens at the beginning of any kind of education or journey of exploration? You accumulate different notions. And these notions create what? Okay, so suddenly these notions become part of my intellect, and then they start to now get projected into the world. So then the kind of talk in this stage is, there are these other dimensions and these beings, these amazing angelic beings, and they're here to help us, and we're being dumbed down by the alien. We originally had 12 strands of DNA, and we're there to come back to that. Though I've been in the conspiracy theories for a long time, so I've heard all the parts that go there. And the aliens are way more advanced, and we're just they're experiments. And there is Metrodon. My God, how many names are out there? There's actually a book called Ascension Manual, and I read it. It is channeled, and there's over 100 names of different deities, and it gives you this whole map of the whole universe, and you think, wow, this is it, right? And I thought I really found the answer because it's so like aligned and structured, right? And then you look at another book like the Pleiadians of the Dawn or the Ra transcripts or the Cassiopeans or Bashar or all of these different channel material, which I've read, by the way. And they also give you a very good model about the universe. Now, they'll generally talk about one thing. That's the good part, oneness. That's what I do appreciate. So that's taken me very far. But you're convinced, like, wow, like so much knowledge. And then what happens? I end up listening to those beings and discarding everything at the earthly level. Because if they're way more advanced, then how's the Upanishads going to help? The Upanishads is just this low, vibratory, earthly realm. I don't want to listen to this. So you see how one starts to actually go backwards. Before they were fine in stage 2, right? They were just a normal person working. Now in stage 3, they've gotten all of these notions and gotten even farther away from the journey because of the different accumulative ideas. So various satsangs, various texts get listened to. So here she thinks he is a doer and struggles to experience it. This is still the stage of a doer. Remember, stage 2 was trying to practice something, and now as a result of that practice, one gets frustrated, and they suffer a sense of unworthiness. That means I'm not good enough for this journey. I'm not special. This isn't for me. I'm just an ordinary gal. On the account of his incompetence at achieving it. Okay, then what happens is, okay, why does this person give up? So they give up, right? As a result of practicing. So this stage is practicing really hard. This is a stage when you go on pilgrimages and listen to different, everyone that you can get your hands on, all of the meetups, all of the Google retreats, go to every single one of them. So what happens is, they eventually give up. Why? Because he or she, number one, most importantly, does not qualify. What are the 2 qualifications of Vedanta? You need to have dispassion. What does dispassion mean? Detachment. What does detachment mean? I see that this world is but a passing phenomena and it has nothing of real value to give me. That causes automatic detachment. And you also have to have viveka. What is viveka? Discrimination. At this stage, not yet between Atman and Atman, because that's way far. But discrimination at least about what's longer, what here lasts much longer than just this one night, dinner or this little retreat that I'm going to go. What is here that's worthwhile pursuing? That requires some discrimination. So he or she does not qualify. That's why they gave up. And of course, because they gave up, they blamed the guru. But the problem was what? Premature attendance due to lack of qualifications. They have not been told how to gain this basic vairagyam and viveka, this dispassion and discrimination. And they, most importantly, have not been told that self cannot be experienced, ever. Why? Why can you not ever experience yourself? Because you're always experiencing yourself. How? As the self-evident I. Whenever you say I am, that's it. That's as high as you can go to. Of course, because we think that's not good enough, because it's so obvious, there has to be something better. Therefore, it cannot be in the I am, it has to be something other than the I am. But what is the most common experience that you have? The sense of I-ness. So nobody's ever taught us this, and that's why we keep on chasing. So with frustration to experience it, one falls in love and makes a family, makes babies. Why? Because it's so much easier to get satisfaction in this world than to what? Sacrifice, if not your entire family sometimes, not in all cases, but sacrifice so much in the world only to arrive to the truth. It's much easier to find happiness right now, right here. Just look at someone else who wants happiness, you want happiness, come together, done. Whereas spirituality, it's what? Delayed gratification. And not everyone is qualified to wait. We want satisfaction right now. So now you can start to see why the world is in the state that it is. Why it's much easier to attend to relationships and family as opposed to stop and say, how many times have I already had families before in past lives? Countless. Already been a mom, already been a father, already been a sister, brother, already fought wars, already saved the world. You've done every single thing there is to say. On the basis of that, you can use that knowledge alone to form this passion for the world. Although ignorance, number 38, although ignorance and concealment exist before the reflection appears in awareness, so let's see what this means. So before the superimposition, so we're talking about the projection of the whole universe now. Jiva exists in an unmanifest condition. Okay, what is it? Okay, so pause there. The creation is not being projected yet. What it's saying here is, despite it not being projected, so at this point there's no creation. And what it's saying here is, even though there's no creation, the jiva exists in an unmanifest condition. That's clear so far. Because creation means what? Everything that was unmanifest now is manifest. So obviously the jiva is also going to be manifest when creation comes. When creation goes back, it's called a great dissolution. Then every jiva recedes back into an unmanifest state. So therefore it is inconsistent to say that the first two stages belong to jiva. Okay, just forget about this sentence. Just go to the blue one. So the jiva is present, but unmanifest. Just like when you sleep, your body is present, but it's unmanifest. So, and when you wake up, when there's a creation, then the unmanifest turns into manifest. So meaning, even during deep sleep, in the unmanifest condition, there is still what? Ignorance of who I am. So this means deep sleep is not a refuge for knowledge, because as soon as the unresolved equation wakes up, it still remains unresolved. This means I need to resolve the equation of who I am and who I am not. And once I resolve that equation, then from then on, all of the equation remains resolved. Okay, both ignorance and concealment. So we're talking about the first two stages, avarana and vikshepa. Avarana and vikshepa do not exist in awareness. So they do not exist in the self, in Brahman. So Brahman does not have any ignorance or concealment, but are superimposed on it. So what this says is that through Maya Shakti, the projection, when it arises, it individuates the total into different parts. Of course, to say parts is a little bit, the parts are still part of the whole. And these parts are still being shone on by what? By Ishvara 1. So therefore, Ishvara 1 is giving power for knowledge to be known, and is giving power to ignorance to also be known. Okay, you can't assign ignorance or veiling to Ishvara 1 nor Ishvara 2. In other words, to Brahman nor Ishvara. Because Ishvara is not ignorant of its nature. So it's talking about Ishvara 2 is not ignorant of its nature. Why? What do we say at the beginning? Ishvara 2, God, is just pure reflection. There's nothing on it. It's just there as a pure mirror to reflect whatever Maya gives it, whatever object gives it, and then it reflects that also. So you see what I just said? An object first needs a reflecting medium to be shown. But that's not the end of it. You need to shine also the light onto that. So there's three parts here. There's number one, awareness, the light. There's number two, the pure reflecting medium, which is Ishvara 2. And number three, the individual parts, the individual planets, people, eyes, trees, birds, all of these objects are also on what? On that reflecting medium. Okay. Because Ishvara is not ignorant of its nature, it's conscious of itself. So why is it not ignorant of its nature? Because Ishvara and Brahman are not apart. And Ishvara is the total. Ishvara 2 is the total. And the total cannot be ignorant because it's the total. There's nothing that it's missing. But only the person is missing something. That's why the person is ignorant and the total cannot be ignorant. Because Ishvara 2, so we're talking about Ishvara 2 now, is actually, so this is a new definition of what is Ishvara 2, is Ishvara 1 wielding Maya. That's a fantastic definition. Meaning creation is consciously created. So what is Ishvara 2? In Bhagavad Gita classes on Tuesday, I always, when I say Ishvara, I'm referring to Ishvara 2. So when I say Ishvara 2, God, we're actually talking about what? Ishvara 1 wielding Maya. Can someone explain to me the word wielding? It's taking its power and it's maintaining its power. Well, it's not taking it, but it's just the power is present and Brahman is just present. So, because of Brahman's presence and that potential called Maya, we say Brahman is as though wielding Maya, but it's actually wielding of itself. Okay. Number 41 to 42. So it's just going to repeat the same thing now. I am a samsari. That's stage 3. Okay, we're going to get with these next stages. So all of the stages that we're talking, all 7 stages we're speaking of, belong to whom? Ishvara 1 or the Jiva? Jiva, of course. Ishvara 1 cannot, nothing belongs to Ishvara 1. Ishvara 2 is pure reflection. It's total, nothing's missing in a pure reflection. So they have nothing to do with what we're talking about. They have nothing to do with the person's own ignorance. So all of these 7 stages, including stage 6, which is moksha, I am fulfilled. Yes, there's something after moksha. I am fulfilled. Even that belongs to the intellect. The intellect is fulfilled. Brahman had nothing to do with it. Brahman is just kind of chilling out, going, oh, that jiva is fulfilled. Okay. So they belong to the jiva in its unmanifest form as prajna, the sleep state jiva. Okay, so as long as what it's saying is, if we go back to sleep, so in sleep, as long as you're sleeping and you haven't resolved the equation, that equation remains permanently unresolved until it's resolved. So all of these stages belonged, the past present, belonged to the jiva in its unmanifest form, who hasn't resolved the equation. We haven't discussed the prajna yet. Okay, the deep sleeper. Let's read what this says. So the deep sleeper. That's why there is no jiva, mind, intellect, in deep sleep. That's obvious. There's no you, its body, in sleep. Because it's covered by tamas. Tamas is the energy of matter. So this whole world is only created because of the Tamaguna. And the subtle body is in the seed state. So the subtle body during sleep is where? In the seed state, which is your causal body. So your subtle body, your mind, recedes back into your causal body during deep sleep. And where is, did you hear that statement? And where is ignorance destroyed? When someone gains moksha, what happens? Avidya gets removed. From where? In the causal body. I know you're going to say intellect. It is also in the intellect. But what causes the ignorant intellect? The cause of the ignorant intellect. The causal body. And what gives birth to a person? The ignorant causal body. If the causal, so what does causal body mean? Body that causes the result. And the result is what? Person. Person means what? Body, mind, intellect. Body, mind, intellect means what? Limitation. Limitation means what? I think I'm that limitation. So if I destroy that thought that I am that body, mind, intellect, that means what? I've not only destroyed that thought in the intellect, but also I've destroyed avidya in the causal body. Thus, upon death, there is no more avidya because I've destroyed that during life, living on earth, called the Jivan Muktaha. And therefore, after death, there is no more birth. Because I've done the job. I've removed ignorance, avidya, in the causal body. How? Through Vedanta. Through inquiring the nature of self and not-self. So, okay, beyond bundle of tendencies are yet to manifest. So, vasanas. So, in the sleep state, they're yet to manifest. So, it doesn't mean just because you're in a sleep state, you're free. You're only free in the sleep state, but as soon as we wake up, the problems continue from yesterday. And when prarabdha karma starts, tendencies become manifest and awakening begins. This is a good model to demonstrate how rebirth happens. And just like after the body dies, then the tendencies have to go somewhere. Where do they go? Into the individual karana sharira, into the causal body. And because the instrument is no longer functioning, no longer capable of doing things in the world, it's no longer capable of exercising its desires, it gets what? It gets a new instrument, a new fresh instrument called another human birth. Which is, so the birth is because of tendencies and unresolved knowledge of the self. What's more, Ishvara too assigns the same karma stream back to your body despite there being billions of karma streams. That's why you never wake up as a different person from yesterday. Did you ever notice that? You never wake up and go, who am I, you know? You always wake up exactly where you left off yesterday. So if you think how intelligent this design is, huh? Not only for one person, right, is our karma stream kept exactly to this body, this body, this body, but Ishvara keeps that for every single species, insect, animal, in all of the infinite universes in this entire existence. That's how vast and intelligent this design really is. That's why you don't wake up as somebody else, because you know there's a track record. Ishvara's got you on the computer, and they say, this body equals you need to continue your unfinished business from yesterday. Because that will be unfair, like waking up and suddenly, you go, oh my God, I robbed the bank, right? But you didn't rob a bank, someone else robbed the bank. So that means it's their karma stream, not yours. So who's doing this? Ishvara too. You can see how intelligent and amazing this design is. Yes, it literally is an intelligent design. The Christians got that extremely right.
Do you remember the television show Quantum Leap?
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
That's a good show.
Oh. Well, it causes seed to sprout. Okay, what causes a seed to sprout out of its seed state, called the causal body? Well, it's the momentum. See, the seed, if you take a seed and you put it into the right environment, it can't help itself. its nature is to sprout into its unique expression. In the same way, a causal body which has ignorance, not destroyed, if you give it the right environment, and it's always in the right environment, for the seed it's called the soil, for the jiva it's called the entire universe, that is Ishvara too, then it's going to sprout into another person. So just like you can't stop a seed from growing, we cannot stop our rebirth as long as ignorance is destroyed. That's why this rebirth goes on forever. It's just the nature of mechanics. It's built in. Okay. The ancient teachers, number 43, say that ignorance is not possible without awareness. That's obvious. But ignorance belongs to jiva because it identifies with ignorance. It says, I don't know who I am. Okay, it says, I don't know who I am. Why? Because this intellect has not been told who it is. And all ego does, it just reads, all ego is just a record player head, like a hard drive head. And it just simply reads whatever data is in here, and it says to that data, yes, that's mine, 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 mine. Ignorance, mine. Knowledge, mine. Good person, mine. Bad person, mine. So it means the new name for ego is me, myself, and I, or mine, or owner of mind, owner of experience. It just claims, it just grabs everything. Mine, me, that belongs to me. Ignorance, mine. I'm a bad person, me, that's mine. I'm a good person, I love myself, that's mine also. Oh, you know, I don't have any discipline, that's also mine. I'm totally not good at discipline, that's also mine. I'm excellent at discipline, that's mine also. So who's saying that? The ego. But you're not the ego, nor the contents which the ego is reading. You are actually, in truth, the awareness which is making or giving power to the ego to say that. So this I sense that we speak of, that I sense is the ego. But what's then awareness? How do you determine the difference between I am and the actual I am? How do you do this? Because now we raise the question. If we say I am, who's speaking? The ego is speaking. But now you're going to ask, well then how do I know the difference between I am ego and the I am awareness? Can somebody answer that? It's we need to know this, because then how are we going to resolve this equation?
I am that which illumines.
Huh?
I am that which illumines. I am.
Yeah, good, excellent. And of course, that the I am which illumines. So you had two I ams, right? The I am which illumines the I am, right? So this I am, the number one, you can't mention that. You can't say that. It's unverbalized. Because if I verbalize it, then what? I was aware of verbalizing it. So I can never mention awareness, because to try to mention awareness, I have to be aware of trying to mention awareness. So is that clear? The difference between I am and the actual awareness, the true nature of I? Okay. Okay, problems. Let's read this blue text. Problems are only our problems because we identify with our problems in the intellect and the mind which has not been disciplined. All problem situations are created by the laws and orders of Ishvara Tu. Now, to say Ishvara Tu created them, now we can start looking at this directly, but that would be incorrect to say that your problems were given to you by Ishvara. Can you see that difference? God did not give you problems. What do we say about Ishvara Tu on the beginning? It's just a pure reflection, all knowledge, all power, which supplies the field according to its own interaction or interactional forces between each other to create this world that we have. But the reflection had nothing to do with it. The reflection is just a substratum providing the individual characters to jump and play and to, so if two characters, have a disagreement, they had nothing to do with the soil they're standing on. They can't now blame the soil. That was entirely their own accord. So all problems and situations are created by the individuals themselves who are supported by Ishvara too. For example, did you invent confusion? Because we're confused, right? Did you ever notice that? Like, you didn't even create confusion. We just own confusion. We go, I'm confused. Like, nobody's born and says, I want to be a confused person in life. I think that's my job occupation. Nobody does that. We're just born as innocent individuals, and suddenly we're sort of like a truck, a dumpster truck, unloads confusion and self-love issues and abandonment issues all onto us. And then we sort of identify with that, and then the problems become our problems. No, that's the answer. Did you invent? Hence, even original sin per Christianity is a false idea because you did not invent sin. You did not create it. Nobody comes into the world and says, I think I want to sin. I think I want to do wrong. And I think I want to feel guilty because I've done something wrong. That just doesn't, there's no logic there to say that you're guilty because you've done something. Because it's kind of like, putting a bird inside a cage and it's got nowhere to escape. And then making the bird feel guilty, how, it doesn't have the strength to come out of the cage. But it's only because I've enclosed it and now the bird, feels hopeless. So this means the teaching can be, distorted, and it disempowers the individuals because you've done something wrong and you need to forgive. You've done nothing wrong because you are awareness. You're the awareness of the wrongdoing or the right doing. Also, Christians don't know. Christians don't know or not aware that God or Ishvara too can't create. That's can't create without consciousness. Uncaused cause. Just like a dreamer caused the dream but didn't cause the dream. Did you cause the dream? Your dream? You did, but you didn't. Now, why do I say that? Why do I say you did? Because without you, there is no dream. But why do I say you didn't? Because you didn't go, in 10 seconds, I'm going to start dreaming. 9, 10, boom. Oh, you didn't do that. So, see, this is one thing about Vedanta, is that we show you these. If you don't have knowledge of awareness, then a lot of problems get created. And then we make God into Ishvara too. But God is not just Ishvara too. God is what? Both. So, any questions before we move on to stage 4? To make sure it's clear. We'll zoom out. All states belong to the Jiva. Self has no stages and isn't born. So all of this is just for the Jiva, body, intellect. You're free of all of this.
Just gives us something to do during the course of the day,
Yeah, pretty much. No, pretty much. Exactly. Right. You got like an extra 30, 40, 50 years to live on Earth. You might as well just get fascinated by something.
Does the causal body cause everything that the subtle body does?
The causal body, the subtle body is just as a value neutral mechanism which operates according to its boss. So imagine the causal body is like the boss, and it says, in my company, you need to act like this. You need to, because remember, causal body carries your vasanas, and vasanas are tendencies. So whatever tendencies are here, they're going to dictate what goes on in your mind. If my tendencies are to play computer games, that tendency is not in the subtle body. That tendency is in my unconscious, in the causal body. And that tendency is just going to influence this mind to start playing games, just like smoking even. Smoking is also in the unconscious.
So how would you explain something like going into a coma? I mean, that's an example of the gross body
Yeah.
being affected, and that also affects the subtle body. So it's like the cause going backwards. Does that involve the causal body at all? Or?
The causal body remains untouched even in coma. And it's only the causal body that brings the person out of the coma. Because the person has to have some kind of a basis to rely on to come back. You don't just come back empty. And even if you do come back empty from a coma, why is that? Because one of the parts in the brain has been damaged. So it's unable to receive the fullness of the radio frequencies being emitted by the causal body. I'm just using metaphors. Also, the causal body remains untouched in the coma, but the subtle body, if you're aware of, sometimes people say, I was aware during my coma. Did you notice that? Now, you can only say you were aware, or I heard, I was still kind of there. That's only because there's still a functioning subtle body working for the person to be able to capture. Because remember, all of the sensory data from the world is processed in the subtle body. So the subtle body has to be working a little bit in order to then, after the coma, say, I heard your words. I know you were there. But then if the person comes out of the coma and says, I have no idea what happened. Why is that? Because that was as good as deep sleep. That means the subtle body was completely unavailable. In the seed state, in the causal body. So causal body, once again, is the cause that makes you think the way you're thinking. That makes you do, that makes you act, that makes you speak the way you're speaking. Because it carries your vasanas, your tendencies. All of those tendencies, they need some mechanism to be expressed. And what mechanism do they borrow? They borrow the beautiful mechanism of the person's subtle body, which includes the mechanism of emotions. You need an emotion to experience pain or joy. You need the intellect to process what it means to have a tendency, what it means to want to employ or engage in some kind of an activity. And you need a ownership mechanism to own the interaction between the mind and the intellect and the memory, the chitta. And then, once the ego has owned all that data, which has resulted of your vasanas, then it gets sent through your karma indriyas, through your hands, through your speech, through your legs. And then you act out whatever was going on in the mind. Okay, so that's that process, from top to bottom. So anything that's here ends up throughout your legs, your arms, your hands, the sex organs, the anus, the 5 organs of action. So this means anyone who's, so if you look at a person, just in general, you look at their attitude, you look at the way they speak, the way they carry themselves, all that's doing is you're actually looking at their vasanas, their causal body. And also remember this, it goes one step further, because the vasanas also get processed in how educated your intellect is. So for example, imagine that the vasana says to swear. Like a person, swears. Just to generally use swear words. Now suppose in your intellect you have knowledge which says it is not nice to swear. So what's going to happen? This is going to get emitted into the intellect, and the intellect is going to stop it, or at least cut it down, and then the final result would be, instead of 5 swear words, is going to be 1 swear word. Or suppose that your intellect suppose that your mind is extremely developed, so it's emotionally strong, it's firm. And the Vasana says that if somebody talks to me in a disrespectful way, I will lose it, right? I will just go, I will show them. So suppose that's the Vasana, and then somebody speaks to me disrespectfully, and then, that's like rage status. And now that rage status or that Vasana has to go through a conditioned, a matured mind, which has taught itself how to receive, how to act politely, then the final output would be what? Would be a little bit more mature response. So the interaction between Vasanas, intellect, mind, ego, and the final response emitted through your physical organs is constantly going on. Yeah. But it all comes back to the causal body. Causal body is the body because of which you are the way that you are in every area. The way you think, the way you calculate, the way you deal with things, the way you inquire, the way you wish to, how determined you are, and everything else about you. Is that good?
I'm just not sure I understand. Let's say you remove part of my brain, and before it's removed, I'm maybe I'm an angry person, and afterwards I'm not angry.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem to involve any of the vasanas, but how would you explain that?
They took out your brain and now you're not angry anymore.
That's an example.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. Some ways the cause goes backwards. It goes from bottom to top.
I see that's also possible because, see, it depends what part they took out. Suppose they took out the neocortex, which is responsible for processing your verbals. Then, the verbals themselves can accentuate the anger. Because as soon as I say one word out, then it reinforces that I'm indeed angry. But now that I cannot say or speak much because I mumble as a result of the neocortex damage, then it's going to reinforce that I'm not that angry. Or also because if you take out a part of the brain, it's going to minus the ability that the person can operate. It's going to create sort of putting a person on a LSD. Right? Something's missing. So now the brain has to overcompensate, and now it's drawn from different parts of the brain in order to keep you alive. So obviously now it's going to take away from the emotional capacity in order to make up for the, let's say, the intellectual capacity. So everything's going to change as a result of taking out or damaging a satellite dish. If you damage a satellite dish, you still got a signal on the TV, right? But the signal is still, you can still make it out, but it's not as pure as it once was.
So you're saying even if a person has a lobotomy or something and appears their personality's changed, their vasanas are still all the same?
They're still vasanas all the same, yeah, because they just can't express them because the right instrument is not there to demonstrate those vasanas, yeah. Okay, we'll do one more and then we'll... Okay, stage. Now, sattva starts to come in. Now, the person has done enough sadhana, spiritual sadhana, and they've gone through this zoo of false notions and have realized that they got frustrated, remember, as a result of doing different things. And as a result of going back into the world, they mature a little bit, the mind gets clear. And what happens is indirect knowledge, which is paroksha jnanam. Paroksha jnana, if you think the word paroksha, you can convert that into intellectual knowledge. So it's still a fact. It's not an actual experience, it's a fact. But a fact known to me. It's just like a knowledge fact. So the individual hears about Vedanta. Now remember, Vedanta does not just mean this class. Vedanta means knowledge of who you are. Okay, so when we speak of Vedanta, don't just think, speaking about Advaita Vedanta. Vedanta just means nature of the self, which is applicable in all areas to everyone. The individual hears about Vedanta, becomes curious about it, and develops some faith in it because they've heard enough or sufficient knowledge and logic behind to support the statements. He learns that the self exists. Now we told you what the self is, but often believes that it is an inconceivable object only attained by great masters. But he or she persists. So for example, they say in the blue, I'm just a regular person. Only Buddha or Jesus can get enlightened. Only Ramana or Nisargadatta or whoever you want to add into that list. They're special people. They have a special karma. They're born in a special family. They're all Indians. Did you ever notice that? Everyone enlightened is an Indian, right? And I'm not Indian. I'm just a white person. So this is the kind of thinking that goes on in stage 4. Now, despite this kind of discouragement, we just keep going on. Something just makes us keep coming back, and we don't know what it is. Something inside won't allow you to quit. Now let's read the blue. So where most so this is a good point. This is where most spiritual people are. So they say there is a self, there is this truth, and I'm convinced and know it exists. So this is a stage where you're sufficiently convinced, if not totally convinced. This is where the most spiritual teachers are operating from, or a number of teachers, telling you that we need to experience the self, believing duality is reality. They don't like knowledge. This is still the experiential enlightenment stage. And say it's bogus, because knowledge is also Maya, and Maya is there to, capture you inside samsara, and so knowledge is also just ignorance. There's no ignorance, there's no guru, and you're not the doer. Even ignorance is an illusion. Even guru is an illusion. There's only consciousness. Hence, it's ignorance masquerading as knowledge. There's a word for this. Do you know what it is? Description? Neo-Advaita. A certain section of Neo-Advaita, not all of them, of course. So basically, you go to a Neo class, or a different kind of class. We're not going to just say Neo, and I'm not putting down Neos, by the way. Just use an example. And they say that duality is... Okay, they don't say that. They say this is a non-dual universe. But they say things like, knowledge is an illusion. Advaita Vedanta is an illusion. This world is an illusion. You're an illusion. I'm an illusion. Desire is an illusion. Everything's an illusion. And even the guru is just, another illusion. There's no knowledge, there's no guru, there's nothing. So it's just like very general, right? It's just very general speak. And it sounds very nice. It sounds very convincing. Like, wow, this is a high teaching, there's nothing, it's all an illusion. You're right, yeah. I was kind of confirmed that. I always felt that. So you buy these teachings very easily. So most of the spiritual world ends up stopping here in the stage 4, indirect knowledge. And all this knowledge about the non-dual stuff, it becomes intellectual. And then I end up going, that is an illusion. All that is real is consciousness. You see what just happened? That is an illusion. All that is real is consciousness. So what? I just called consciousness an illusion, because everything is consciousness. Remember, everything is Ishvara 1. And then I say everything is consciousness. So I am splitting and creating a duality. I'm saying everything is an illusion and consciousness alone is real. but in truth there is only consciousness. So what happens is this knowledge of oneness gets distorted, and the person ends up creating this idea of oneness, but it is what? Ignorance masquerading as self-knowledge, knowledge of oneness. And one would also say, for example, put like big pictures on the wall and of these great big gurus, and they'll worship them and cherish them, and they'll say, yeah, but Buddha said this, right? So Buddha's the one to listen to, and me, we're nothing. But Buddha, Jesus, they're the ones. Krishna, they're the big ones. You're just like a small person. So there's a split between the masters and the individuals of the world. The common people and the masters, there's a big difference. The masters are masters, the common person is just a small person. Okay, any question about this one before we end? There is a self, and I'm convinced I know it, but at least they're doing well, because now they at least know there is a self, they've been told there is a self, but the self is still what? An object, known to it. It's still an object, and I think I now know about this object, and the whole journey of moksha was about what? Discovering, going inside the library, and finding which shelf to pick, and if I pick that, and when I pick that shelf, and I get that knowledge, I've done it. So it was really about knowledge pursual in the intellectual or scholarly form versus assimilating the actual knowledge. So that's stage 4. So stage 4 is still scholarly, like a professor is telling you, here's the religions, here's what all the religions are saying, and here's where you fit, and here's how the hierarchy works, and so on. Okay, let's see where we are and what we have to do still. Stage 5, stage 6, stage 7. Okay, let's leave that for the next fortnight. Yeah? Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. I'll show you where this is going. So we're going to finish this off, the last 3 stages, and then we're going to get into even more advanced, all about the self-existence consciousness. This is still from, remember, Panchadasi is an extremely advanced text. So we're going to go through that. This all about Maya, Jiva, creation, how it's created, what is Ishvara, how ignorance happens, how this universe is created, experience, what is it, the ways of thinking, discrimination of self from the objects, analysis, more into the reflection teaching, how we cognize objects. So there's tons and tons of detail to go through, and how to remove duality.